It's time for Done Being Single with your hosts, Trevor and Robbie Sharf. If you're dating the same type over and over again, making the same mistakes and not finding love, then you're not done being single. What you need is some tough love dating intervention, Trevor and Robbie style. Whether you're new to dating or have been dating forever, we've got you covered. Now, here are your hosts, Trevor and Robbie Sharf.
Kiss and then
we get into it. Actually, we fight, then we kiss, and then we get to fight again. That's how it works. What a lovely thing.
Well, that's done being single in a nutshell.
Sometimes
we fight, we kiss, we make up.
Sometimes we're not done being single.
Yes, you are.
Okay, I am done being single.
You're done.
You're
done.
I have no desire to be single anymore. I really don't.
Thank you for that.
I have no desire.
Thank you, because for someone with, an anxious attachment style, although now that I'm reading the different varieties here, and I know a thing or two about attachment style, or theory, which this is the topic of the show. I'm thinking I'm more, not so much anxious as I was avoidant. Was no
Okay.
longer. So for those of you who don't know what attachment theory is, it was proposed, I guess, developed by a British psychologist named John Bowlby. And it basically has everything to do with lasting psychological connectedness between human beings. In other words, how I know it to be is that we are all born and raised with certain styles of attachment. No, that's not true. We learn from our primary caregivers, and our guest Tracy Crossley is going to go way more into this than I can, but this is how I know it to be.
So this gets established like in our first year of life.
Yes, and how you grew up seeing love and how love was demonstrated and modeled and shown to you is sort of how you go through life, and it's what we take with us into our adult relationships. So it kind of informs those relationships. So depending on what kind of home you were raised in and what kind of parents you had, if it was secure, if it was, stable, chances are you're going to grow up and have a secure attachment style.
And this comes out so often in people that we know of our age, and then we find out about how they were brought up, and you can directly connect the dots here to a specific attachment style based on who their personality is today and who they are. And
yes,
it's fascinating.
So this was a total eye-opener for me. And I only learned of this, I don't know, a few years ago, actually, when we started doing the show. And I was researching everything having to do with dating and relationships and marriage and, just the stuff that trips us up. Somehow I fell upon or tripped upon attachment theory, which, again, blew my mind because it kind of explained everything for me, in terms of just how I was raised and why I have the attachment style that I do. So, and you know what I'm talking about, because you knew my parents.
Yes.
So, they had their issues, but because they were lovely, wonderful people, but they had their own issues having to do with love and commitment and what I felt was healthy attachment, which they did not have, which then was, kind of passed down to me. So I'm the beneficiary of all that fucked upness.
No, I am the beneficiary.
No, excuse me, you are. Okay, so just to explain
I did not have that upbringing.
No, you were not raised by wolves. Okay, so let's talk about the different styles of attachment. Okay. There's secure, which I'm going to read a little bit about. Can trust fairly easily, is attuned to emotions, can communicate your upsets directly, leads with cooperative and flexible behavior in relationships. Okay, I'd say you hit all those. Anxious. has a sensitive nervous system, struggles communicating needs directly, tends to act out when triggered, i.e. makes partner jealous. I don't think I'm that.
No.
Here's what I think I am. A little bit avoidant. And under avoidant, there's a subhead of, so there's two avoidants. There's avoidant dismissive and avoidant fearful. Okay? Avoidant dismissive downplays importance of relationships, is usually extremely self-reliant, and can become more vulnerable when there is a big crisis.
Or even a small one.
I think that is a little me.
Mm-hmm.
And then avoidant fearful, you're more dependent in relationships than avoidant dismissive, strongly fears rejection, has low self-esteem, and has high anxiety in relationships. That's not so much me.
No.
Okay, so we're going to get into this.
Good.
Because this is the shit
All right.
when it comes to figuring out who you are in relationships, why you do what you do, how you date the way you date, how you love the way you love. I mean, it is right, all killer, no filler.
If you find out you're one, can you become another?
That's what I'm going to ask Tracy.
Okay.
And I think over time and with work you can change. I think some of this stuff is just so hardwired in. It's going to be challenging. But wow, with some awareness, which is everything, just even being aware of these triggers that you have when you're a kid and that you bring them with you along kind of as baggage is so empowering, because it can help you change and be the style that you want. Shut up. Let the guest speak. Can you show our audience we have a card.
Bring on the guest.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
All right.
Tracy Crossley is a behavioral relationship expert, author, and podcast host who specializes in treating individuals with unhealthy life and relationship patterns. Tracy helps clients transform imposter syndrome, insecure attachment, negative belief systems, narcissistic damage, destructive self-talk, and more. Tracy's popular weekly mental health podcast, Overcome Insecure Attachment, offers listeners a different perspective when it comes to breaking the cycle of unhealthy behaviors that keep them repeating pain-inducing actions. Her book, Overcoming Insecure Attachment, 8 Proven Steps to Recognizing Anxious and Avoidant Attachment Styles and Building Healthier, Happier Relationships, is out now. Damn, that's quite a bio.
I wish we had time for Tracy to come on the show.
Tracy, it was nice having you on the show. Bye-bye.
Tracy, come on board. Let's get that.
I need to shorten that bio.
Oh, my God.
That was great. Okay. Are you done?
I am so
Oh,
done
my God.
talking.
All right. She's done being talking. All right. So,
Tracy.
Hi, Tracy.
Welcome back.
Hi.
Okay, returning champ
Yes.
was on the show, I don't know how many years ago, maybe one of the first. As you can see, nothing's changed. We're just as ridiculous as we were the first days. No, that's not true. We've learned a lot and grown a lot and been through a lot. And so we bring that. Tracy was on the show when we started, I think. And now she's back.
That's great.
Because I love her and I love what she has to say about this. And this is, as you could hear, my new favorite. This is my cause celeb, attachment theory. It explains everything. So, but you do better at this than I am. So go ahead, pick up where I left off. What is attachment theory? You explain it much better.
I think what I do is I explain it more in, I don't want to say it in simplistic terms. I just say, basically, when you're born, everybody comes into the world in the same way, right? We have a personality and then we have conditioning. And our conditioning is basically we're either securely attached or insecurely attached. I think there's variances in there, by the way. When it was originally the theory, which was by John Bowlby, as you mentioned, came about, it was about how babies attach. And Mary Ainsworth took it a step further, and she's the one who helped to start develop the styles. Like, you can go crazy with all the different styles, but I bring it back to either anxious, avoidant, or anxious avoidant, because that's basically what they all drill down to. And I think that most people, and not to burst anybody's bubble, but usually if you have an insecure attachment, your partner does as well. it's very rare that somebody is securely attached and would be with somebody who's insecurely attached, because there really wouldn't be an interest, because that would mean a lot of drama. So that means also that perhaps by the time you guys met, you had worked through a lot of your stuff, and therefore, no, okay, never mind.
He's kidding.
Some of your stuff, maybe? No?
Yeah,
A
you
little
worked.
I'm still learning about stuff.
Okay, I just have to interrupt for 1 second, because one could make the argument that because he got married so late, 57,
6.
that he's an avoidant type.
No.
Probably.
He presents as a secure type, but right?
Am I being penalized because I
takes
didn't
that
propose?
long?
I didn't find somebody that I wanted to marry
But
prior
there's
to
an
that?
there's
Is
an
that-
avoidant, current running through that. No,
So I would have scored more points if I had gotten a divorce in my past? Is that something that...
I don't know. What say you, Tracy?
It's not necessarily that you would have a divorce in your past, but normally people that have more of an avoidant tendency tend to be the people that seem very independent, who seem to, I would say, find a lot of their interests to be, I don't want to say non-person related, but non-relationship related. A lot of times avoidance, they will get close enough, but not close and remain close. So they tend to enter into relationships that look kind of like a yo-yo as far as intimacy goes. And they're always looking for the perfect partner. So, and that can be elusive for a lot of people, unless all of a sudden, you grow and you go, wait a minute, there must be something about me here. And you start to open yourself and you start to do things that are going to change that. And so when you change that paradigm, obviously you change the kind of relationships you enter into.
Okay. How do you change? I'm jumping ahead in my questions, but I'm so curious because I don't know what the prescription is. I can only tell you that once you, for me, had awareness of it, I was able to stay kind of mindful of my tendencies. Is that all it takes? I mean, how much healing and repairing do you have? How far back do you have to go?
It's going to depend on you. And what I mean by that is, like, for me, I was an anxious avoidant, right? So I could avoid relationships for long periods of time. I got divorced when I was 30 and I remained single for over 20 years. I had relationships that were short and I could get anxiously attached in those relationships, right? And so my whole thing was, I had anxiety from the time I was a little kid. They didn't know back then. I mean, growing up in the 70s, it was like, you have a stomach ache before school. So they thought it was something physical. They didn't realize that it was attached to anxiety. So long story short, I never felt peace, or I never felt okay. And I thought that was just the way everybody felt. And when I realized that wasn't true, was sometime, my late 30s, early 40s, I went, okay, you know what? There's something going on here and I don't want to feel this way anymore. So my whole journey was about getting not just out of these attachment issues, because at the time I didn't know that was driving a lot of my behavior, but I wanted to have a sense of well-being. I didn't want to play coach with myself. I wanted these things to be second nature. And so, like, in my work and in my book, what I do is I help people to break the patterns permanently that create attachment issues. So first, it takes a lot of awareness, of course, because you got to be aware of the things you say, the things you do, right? How you feel, what you think, what's your intention. A lot of times those things don't all add up together. They go in different directions. It could be, I want a healthy relationship, and then I do something to sabotage it, right? So we do these things being unconscious to them. And what it takes is doing some deep emotional work, because you developed a belief system, whether, we're talking attachment issues or anything. You have a belief system. Like when you get out of bed, you believe there's a floor beneath your feet that you're going to land on, right? You don't think, I'm going to get out of bed and fall. So that's a belief. And we have beliefs that run our life everywhere in everything we do. Even in talking, I believe as I talk, my voice is going to work, and so they're unconscious until you become aware of how they're running things. So your attachment issues feed into beliefs like, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, whatever it happens to be. And so you want to get to the emotions, because emotions are what keep your beliefs in place, because they keep the patterns in place. Because if you ever notice, you have an emotional motivation to do the things you do or say the things you say. So, yeah.
In your treatment with patients and clients, is the first step acknowledgement of the attachment theory that they have,
The first step is
or that you recognize?
I get, my thing is to get past like the label part, because it's not necessarily that everybody has to fit into it. It's more, how is this dysfunctional in your life and causing you pain, right? So I want to know what their patterns are. And because I've been doing this for so long and talking to people, it's like I pretty much can tell, okay, I know what this, I know how this is working over here for this person, right? And so we go for awareness, feelings to action. Okay. And we call it emotionally risky action, because if you don't take emotionally risky action, it's like saying to somebody, I'm going to go skydiving. Okay, well, that's scary, and I may have an emotional response to it, but how is that going to help me to live every day? How is that going to help me in my relationships? So your emotionally risky action is something where, and this happens a lot, especially with people with attachment issues, you're going to ask the questions you don't ask normally. Like when you're single, you don't ask any kind of questions of the other person because you're afraid they're going to think you're needy, or they're going to think something's wrong with you, or whatever. It's also saying things that are true about you, like sharing your crap, not where you're putting it on somebody else. You're just saying, look, these are things I've been working on. I mean, if you've been in a relationship and gone through a breakup, you have crap. And so it's not, again, to pour it out and go, well, this is all my stuff and I hope you can help me fix it. That's not what you're doing. But what you want to do is you want to own it. You want to take responsibility for all your choices. My choice is to have gone through crappy relationships. My choice is to do the things I do. Really hard stuff. It sounds easy when I'm saying it, but when people are in a situation where they have to take emotionally risky action, I have worked with people who are driven, are successful. And I will tell you that it doesn't matter, because they're afraid to rock the boat. They're afraid they're going to be abandoned, all of the things that relate back to why you have attachment issues in the first place.
And it seems like that's very empowering for somebody to be transparent about their own stuff and to come out and say to somebody that they may be newly involved with that this is something that, I'm working through. And I think that if I was the person hearing that from somebody, I would be really respectful and appreciative that they were sharing that with me, as much as I would feel empowered if I was the one offering that about myself. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, I do too. And it also means that you put yourself in situations you normally wouldn't put yourself in, but that you want to be in. And that is hard for most people, because we hear the one voice that's sort of always in the background, saying like the right thing for you to do. And yet we listen to the jerk in our head a lot of the time, that inner critic who's making us do things in the same way we've always done them. And you want to break those patterns because they feel heavy, they're tiring, they make you resistant to basically living. And so to me, it's all about getting to that deeper place, breaking through those emotional barriers, in the moment. And that's what we do. It's like I have something that's called the method. And with the method, it's like you go in, you go deeper, and it's sort of like certain things line up simultaneously to create this change. And then it's like I don't have half the patterns that I used to have when it comes to my behavior, especially in my relationship I have now.
To have the awareness and the information is the first step. Just knowing that, okay, there's a reason for this. There's actual science and there's data and research. And that was really powerful for me when I first learned about this. And also just having the ability to stop and breathe and take a breath and not have those buttons pushed, refusing to allow yourself to get those buttons pushed is really a lot of it, because there's so much in life that triggers us. And love is scary. It can be really, whoa, it makes you vulnerable. especially, I mean, at all times during it, even in marriage. Okay, sometimes I get, those buttons still get pushed, but in the beginning, when you're dating, holy shit, that is like death-defying sometimes, like holding your breath, and there's so much fear and anxiety, and now there's all of these dating terms like, I mean, I just read 2 more today, cockroaching and oh shit. I mean, there's a new dating term every 5 minutes. What was the other one? Oh, no, what am I asking you for? Because you weren't reading it. Anyway, so in particular, breadcrumbing. Okay.
Right.
Breadcrumbing.
What's cockroaching?
I think when you sleep around a lot, or when the person you're dating is having sex with multiple people and you know it, or
And you're accepting of it? Or
yeah, something like that. Anyway, it's disgusting visual, isn't it?
not pleasant.
Okay. So breadcrumbing, we all know it. Explain breadcrumbing, Tracy.
So breadcrumbing is basically, I would call it the anxious avoidant trap in a sense. So you have somebody go on a date and you're like, oh my God, they're so great. And you think they're thinking the same thing, right? And maybe they are. And you go on a few dates, or maybe you start to get into a relationship. And then all of a sudden they stop talking to you as often. They stop seeing you as often. Or this could, like, it could be after the first date, it could happen, where you're thinking, wait a minute, everything was so great. It was so wonderful. What happened? And this person's like, oh, nothing's wrong. Everything's great. And yet their actions are showing they're showing up less. And then maybe they just disappear altogether. And you're like, oh my God, what happened? You're telling all your friends, I can't believe it. What happened? And then this person shows back up and they've given you just enough breadcrumbs so that you're interested still. And you're thinking, oh, well, maybe they really are my soulmate. Maybe this is really going to work out. And so you're basically building a piece of toast with all your breadcrumbs. You're not even getting a loaf. You're getting a piece of toast. And you're saying, oh my God, I want this piece of toast, which again, this person will probably leave you with more breadcrumbs and come back and forth and back and forth. And you'll just keep feeding yourself on the breadcrumbs.
And that becomes satisfying to you because you're being deconditioned from this person. And then you crave those breadcrumbs after a while, those little breadcrumbs.
It also just feeds into how it was when you were a kid. I mean, inconsistency.
Yeah.
Like if love was inconsistent, chances are you're familiar with that dynamic, and so it's something you can deal with.
So one of the things I was going to say is that's your conditioning. Deep down inside, we all want to be loved and feel love all the time, right? Nobody wants to feel like they're not lovable. And the thing is, like how you were saying, inconsistencies. Like for me, my dad came from Germany. My dad was in a concentration camp briefly, and like whole story, right? Whole shit show childhood. So what does he actually have to offer emotionally in a relationship as a parent? Almost nothing. So, you have that. And then, my mom, it's a whole other story. And, basically you're talking about like her parents divorced in the 50s. Whose parents divorced in the 50s? Right. Nobody. So, you had these two people who could not offer any kind of consistency to me. And therefore I would go to more of an avoidancy unless somebody gave me attention. And then I would be anxious because I'd want more of it, because that would be the natural, oh my God, love or, attention. And I was not ever getting that.
Makes sense. Is your father still with us?
No, he died in 2020.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes.
Mine.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Mine last
Sorry
year.
about that. Yeah.
And, I had all kinds of attachment stuff with him. Mm-hmm. And I knew it at the time, and I didn't know what it was, though. You're a kid, you just don't know what. This is what I'm saying, that this is like the brilliance of having this information now gives meaning to it, right? So you think, oh, I wasn't crazy. And then since he's gone, wow, what an opportunity to heal, first of all. What an opportunity to examine and understand and then ultimately heal.
But you don't get to deal. You don't get to.
Not with him. I mean,
right.
No, it's unfinished.
It's unfinished.
It is but that's okay. That's ultimately that's anybody's work to do.
You can't change your childhood. My dad was very intelligent, like extremely intelligent. And we had a meeting, oh God, like 6, 7 years before he died. And basically, I'm like, I don't really know you. And I don't think you really know me. And I wanted to establish some kind of something. What was really interesting, my dad's like, I love you, but I'm emotionally unavailable. You literally use those words. I can't go there. I never can go there.
Yeah. My dad too. When I would ask my father about his past and his childhood and give me some information and who was there and he had such a horrible childhood. He never wanted to talk about it. It was just too painful.
But was that, with you, Tracy, was that something that his childhood affected his relationship with you? That he couldn't talk about that, but he could talk about the relationship he had with you, but he couldn't do it without tying it to his own upbringing, right?
Pretty much. I mean, he would tell me like little stories like that time because like literally he was saved and how his mom spoke German. It's such a long story. Like my dad was born out of wedlock on top of it all. So it was like this whole shit show story. And he was saying as a kid, he remembers feeling insecure. He's like, I was very insecure because he had no stability whatsoever. My great grandparents were who raised him and they ended up in Auschwitz and dead.
Incredible.
Trauma.
Phenomenal. Yeah.
Oh,
Trauma has everything to do with everything. I mean, that's the root cause of attachment right there.
How do we change? How do we get over that to a point where we can live a normal or quote unquote normal life?
There's so many in my method. Okay. Just to go to that, was starting with awareness, right? Because you have to be aware of how you're acting and what is motivating it. So one of the motivators is either going to be intrinsic or extrinsic. A lot of times when you have attachment issues, you're in extrinsic motivation, which means I need validation. I operate off of reward and punishment. I'm not really doing things for the joy of it. That's intrinsic motivation. And I will put aside things that are intrinsically motivating for the extrinsic motivation. And so when you start to realize that, you go, okay, what if I do this? What if I keep doing whatever it is I'm enjoying, right? And I don't put it aside to get the validation or the reward. It's going to feel weird, but I can handle those feelings, right? I got to connect to the feelings. Like my dad, as an example, your dad probably never could connect below the head. They were all up here. And it was like, oh, I got to connect to my feelings. What are my feelings, right?
Which were very reactive.
Right. And those don't tell you what's actually being motivated. It's still a reaction. You have to get below that to what is really operating inside of you. Mm-hmm. And then the more you connect to yourself internally, you start to build value because the one thing you're doing that you haven't done, you're giving yourself attention. And that's something people don't think about because they're looking for attention from someone else. And it has to start with you.
Right. Yeah, that's really important. That I feel for your father. I feel for your father who couldn't share so much of themselves with you both, it seems like. And it's a cleansing when you do, and they went through their lives without ever really doing that, it seems. And it's so sad.
But what's interesting is that you almost didn't have to hear the stories or know because you, like I was saying, it was reactive. So I kind of got everything I needed to know just by the way he reacted to things and how he processed things emotionally, how he expressed himself emotionally. It was like, I don't know what happened to you when you were a kid, but it was bad. Mm-hmm. And it informed the way he loved and without going into, this is a whole other episode with, divorce and my mom and the post-divorce and the trauma that was created, it was just a shit show, as you know. Let's talk about imposter syndrome. Because I found that kind of affected me a little bit when I got married. And I'm so curious about, so much, doing this podcast, I have to tell you, as you know, you are a podcaster, it does, you do research, right? And you read and you learn all of these new cool things and it makes so much sense and it's just so mind-blowing. And imposter syndrome, along with, you've never heard of it?
I don't know what that is.
Along with adjustment syndrome and Okay, I'll let you speak. I'm sorry. See, I can go on and
See,
on.
there you go.
No, this is great. I mean, you can talk about this stuff forever because it's just, there's so much, breath to it. But I would say when it comes to imposter syndrome, so that's basically, to me, it's part of attachment, because what happens is you are rejecting the real self. You're rejecting this person because as a kid, what are you receiving as you, right? A lot of us aren't getting positive feedback. We're getting negative feedback or no feedback, right? We're ignored. And so we develop ways of being that get us attention. So let's say that you get straight A's and now you become the, scholar, right? But maybe you're not really that person. And so we projected out this image to the world of who we really aren't deep down inside, because we're so afraid of who this is inside that we just keep projecting this image out here. And that becomes, you feel like an imposter. And so you cannot let people get close to you because they might find out who you really are. And of course, that's a bad thing. Going back to childhood and that imprint, it's like you feel like, oh, okay, I can't let this person know this about me. I can't let them see this. So I'm going to keep creating distance so that I don't have that worry. I don't have to, and especially when it comes to work and relationships.
Yeah, it would be like getting a big job, right? Or a promotion or something. And then you go, oh my God, this is not happening. This is a fluke, or this is, right? I'm a fake. I'm an imposter. Well, no, you're not. It's actually happening and you deserve it and you're worthy of it.
That's the positive side.
Right?
I hear the negative more than of being afraid of not fulfilling that type of a position. You're not deserving of it. And your imposter that has come out has been the dominant person with the dominant personality within you, and you're not worthy of accolades that may be thrown upon you, and you're afraid of that getting caught. So,
Right.
yeah. Interesting two sides of that story.
Yeah, well, right. So you see it as that. I see it as, oh my God, there must be a mistake. Right?
That's really
like,
fascinating.
what? Someone, give you a promotion, or you got a raise, or you got this big job, or you got married, or something that
Right.
that confirms that, yeah, you're great, you're lovable, you're smart, you're talented. Yeah, you got
Right.
this. And then there's that thing you do to yourself, like, oh no, there was a terrible mistake made here. I don't really
I think so. I
deserve
mean,
it.
if you look, back at how you see yourself, right? Like for me, I was always wrong or I was always bad. So I always figured somebody's going to figure that out.
Right.
So I was a perfectionist. I was a people pleaser. I was doing all these things so nobody would ever figure out how wrong or bad I was, which they would end up like, it would always explode. It would always, sooner or later, something would be really dramatic. And then I'd be like, well, but I'm not really this jerk, but I'm looking like this jerk. So you don't really save yourself in the end either.
Right. Well,
I love this.
Isn't it good stuff?
It's good.
It's really good.
It's so telling, because so much of our interactions with many of our friends that are single and trying to figure things out really stem from their upbringing.
Yeah,
And
I can't.
it seems like it happens within the first year, and then it's baked, and either you deal with it and get over it, or you never deal with it and you are constantly having to push it off to the side, or I don't know.
As friends, both of us, two people who, as Robbie's saying, I think suffer from unresolved or unacknowledged attachment issues. And as a coach, I see it every day in my practice. All day long, I see it. And the first things I say to friends or clients is buy the book Attached. I can't remember. It's called Attached, and then there's a subhead to it. Or just Google attachment theory and get yourself up to speed on what it is. And it will so answer so many questions about why you are who you are. I find it just fascinating. And
Tracy, tell us, do you have a new book out?
Yes, I have overcoming. I just moved, so I'm like,
Okay.
but I have the book up.
Great.
Yes,
Tell us
overcoming
about it.
insecure attachment. So, and it takes a deep dive into what I talked about. It also, I feel, is kind of a manual. So if somebody wanted to go through the process of actually getting out of these patterns permanently, they could buy that and it would help them to do that.
And where can you get that?
You can get it at any bookseller, online or whatever. I mean, from Amazon to Target to
Excellent.
Barnes and Noble, all of them.
Okay. I just need to say I'm going to amend my recommended required reading for my clients. It is now going to be Tracy Crossley's book, Overcoming Insecure Attachment, 8 Proven Steps to Okay. Let's do that again. I'm going to amend my required reading for my clients, and I'm going to recommend Tracy Crossley's new book, Overcoming Insecure Attachment, 8 Proven Steps to Recognizing Anxious and Avoidant Attachment Styles and Building Healthier, Happier Relationships.
Well done.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's
I
required
love that.
reading.
Tell us where people can find you too online.
They can go to tracycrossley.com or they can Google me too. But social media, you can find me anywhere, just putting Tracy Crossley in and you'll find me.
Excellent.
Okay. And if you want to find us, where do they find us?
They know where.
You can find us
DoneBeingSingle.com.
wherever you get your podcasts. I don't know.
That's okay.
Apple, Spotify, Google. Go to our website. We post them. And if you want to find me, you can find me at trevabrandonsharf.com and learn more about me and my coaching services and everything else.
Great.
Okay.
Tracy, thank you so much. Really great. Wish we had more time, but we'll get you back on.
Thank you.
yeah.
And thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed this.
Thank you.
I'm Shadow Stevens with my friends Treva and Robbie. See you next week on Done Being Single.